Hello again, this is Jeremiah of Team Mashup, once again at the BOT Supremacy. This time around I brought a couple other Team Mashup drivers. Ryan, who is driving this ferry weight, McFuddy, the orange one there that just got pinned, and DJ. DJ's worked with me a lot of times on running the Michigan Mashup events. This time around running Antweight Undercutter that he has named Degen from Upcountry. You'll see that one a little bit later on. It's the ferry fights here up first. So this is Ryan's ferry weight that I had loaned to him, McFuddy versus Ravenous Bug Bladder. Now in the ferry weight bracket here, there was only 4 competitors, so they decided to run it round robin. Round robin simply means that every competitor will be fighting every other competitor. Anyway, given that it's 2 wedges, it's not going to be a super action-packed fight. The main thing they're going to be looking to go for is those pins, like what Bug Bladder was able to pull off early in this match. Really, I believe Ryan's doing quite a good job driving it, given that really this is his first time driving it in an actual fight. He drove it for a few minutes for the first time on the floor before having to throw it into the box.
Oh, stickers got my way.
Seems like McFuddy, when they're pushing directly against each other, is able to out-push slightly. This one ends up going to Bug Bladder, though. That pin right at the beginning, I think that made the difference. Now, up next is my ferry weight vertical spinner Homunculus against Commander Troutman. Commander Troutman is just a massive weapon with some tiny wheels at the back, but he's kind of brittle. Right there, he tumbled backwards and a bunch of his wiring fell out of the top plate. And now McFuddy gets to face off against that same robot commander, Troutman. Got a good pin there in the corner. Troutman can just turn himself back over by kind of turning that weapon on.
Oh.
You can see there that McFuddy lost his eye.
There it is.
He got it ripped off. He definitely outpaces speed-wise, which is quite an advantage for him. You see Troutman here is having a lot of trouble. His wheels, one of the motors broke free of the mount. Yep, right there you can see it, so it's already kind of falling out. He's getting it moving enough that he's not being... yep. I think he tapped prematurely there. I think he still had a chance, but... Then, right here, 2 team mashup members, myself and Ryan, had to fight against each other. Given that it's round robin, everyone had to fight each other. Kind of a bummer having to break, our own stuff, though, against each other.
Get him, Ryan, get him.
This matchup is actually quite favorable to me. I'm not going to break myself simply by... My robot's built well enough that it's not going to break simply by attacking him, so... Unless he can repeatedly pin me or get me stuck in a corner or something like that. pushing power was about even, simply because when I would run straight into him, I'd end up right up on the lip of his wedge right there, and only my back wheels would be touching. You can probably start to see a little bit flakes of the TPU, because it's a TPU frame that he's made out of. Kind of starting to rip out, and kind of see them on the sides there. Not really able to do any significant damage to him, though. Still, I was able to be aggressive and in control of the match, and do quite a bit of just cosmetic damage, meaning I took that fight as well. The last fight in the fairy bracket was Homunculus once again against the Bug Bladder. Doing a pretty good job of keeping that front towards me, which is not what I wanted to bite into. There's nothing to bite there. I wanted the back, where the wheels were at. That's where I could actually do some damage. He's running this new interesting armor. It's it's carbon fiber that has been made into like an epoxy type slurry and poured into a mold and then left to harden. It actually held up pretty well against everything that was trying to hit it. I mean, in fact, later he runs this particular robot in one of the... There's a small rumble at the end, and one of the ant weights is hitting it and not doing even that much damage to it. I made some nice little chips and marks and stuff like that, but that's about it. Even though I haven't been able to hit him quite the way I wanted to, I'm still pushing him around, occasionally getting a good hit. Those are the situations I want to avoid, of course, is being up on top of his wedge. And that last fight goes to me as well, meaning that all of the fights... Well, this picture doesn't show what it's supposed to. Anyway, meaning all of the fights in that one went my way, so I was able to take first place, with Bug Bladder taking second, and McFuddy taking third. This first fight for DJ... Not a great fight for him to start out with, because he's against Team YO's TPU Wedge Weird Flex, which is a tough fight no matter how you look at it. No matter what you're fighting it with, it's a tough fight. You get completely smothered, even in the best of situations. He just keeps him held into the wall, so his blade can never spin up properly. You can see that a couple of his hits right at the beginning there did some good damage on that wheel pod on the left side. But as you saw right there, you can see it. His weapon motor has actually dropped from the mounting. This is my fault. When I built this robot, originally for DJ, I forgot to Loctite those screws, so the motor fell loose and it's laying on the floor, kind of high centering him, and obviously he can't start his weapon up. So He ends up tapping out and losing that one. Okay, and then my first fight of the event with Nosferatu against the robot that I am most nervous about there, Mudskipper. I did face him in the finals at the last BOT Supremacy I attended and was able to take the win off of him, but he's made some upgrades to fix basically the things that I was able to exploit before. The fact that his feet pods were pretty weak. They're much buffed up this time around, and while I did hit them initially, I didn't do enough damage to them. And then with that little disc, it's much harder for me to smother him and keep the weapon from spinning up. It's much harder for him to control, too, but I can't smother him quite the same way. And just a few seconds ago, he had hit the side of my weapon disc, causing it to slant slightly, and the blade went right through my weapon motor wires, ripping them out, so I have no weapon. He's damaged one drive side. I'm just kind of crab walking, trying to keep the weapon pointed towards him. In reality, probably would make sense to tap out at this point, but I don't like tapping out. If I can move, I'm going to keep moving. I'm still barely moving. In reality, this is probably the point where they should start thinking about counting me out. I think it's just because they're kind of close to the end of the fight. It's like, I don't know, 20 seconds or something like that.
I think you're done.
Pretty much. I don't know. A lot of destruction can make a good show, too.
That is not drivable.
So that was a good fight. Definitely went to him. Remy, Team YO. Okay, so in the loser bracket, my fight is against, I forget this robot's name, but it is a pretty much brand new Viper kit with the lifter on it. The team that brought it is fairly new to combat robotics. I had spoken with them a bit, and they wanted to get involved, so they bought this kit for their son. And I'm not really running my weapon very much, simply because I don't want to absolutely destroy this robot. He doesn't have a ton of spare parts for it. And with those low-hanging forks, I'm pretty much able to get under him at will, so I didn't really need to just simply destroy him. I could kind of mostly control him. Really, I'm only turning on the weapon occasionally just to show that it still works. If the judge has any confusion about it working, they could say, oh, well, you lost your main weapon. That's a lot of damage to you. And it could sway the decision. Unfortunately, I have yet to see a basic Viper kit do very well. Generally, to make them do relatively decent, they need some modification.
5, 4.
Instantly, what comes to mind is a robot called Lasty that used to be a Viper kit. They made it 4-wheel drive. They kept the lifter, but modified it a little bit, and it actually became a decent robot. Oh boy. Okay, so this is two team mashup robots against each other. Being that we both ended up in the losers bracket, we ended up having to fight each other. I definitely wasn't excited about this one, given that undercutters tend to be a weakness for me. And you can see I've kind of lost drive on one side right there. He's chewing up the undercarriage of Nosferatu. Was able to free up the weapon and through a couple of chained hits. Was able to rip the motor off. So the main issue that this robot is based on, it's based on a robot by Toby Tappa, Team Toby Tappa, called Little Slugger. I've modified it a little bit to use a much bigger motor with a 5mm shaft. I was hoping that would help with the motor durability, but that's still the weak point. Maybe a stronger shoulder bolt. I'm not sure. It's DJ's problem at this point. He can figure out how to deal with that. Regardless, DJ's a good sport about it. Even with hitting him quite a bit. Even with hitting him quite a bit, most of the components in the robot stay intact. Even that motor was able to be used once a new shoulder bolt was put back in it. He was able to repair it and get involved with a grudge match later in the day. Okay, so this one is, I mean, in the bracket it's called Paul's Revenge, even though this robot here isn't actually Paul's Revenge. Paul's Revenge had a little bit of issue during its spin-up earlier, so instead he put in his plastic ant weight. It's a 4-wheel drive vertical spinner, but it's only a plastic drum, so even though it had done fairly well throughout the day, it wasn't going to hold up against a metal weapon.
3, 2, 1.
And then Weird Flex is always one that I'm a little bit nervous about fighting, just because it's very tough, it's very quick, and those forks, when they're pointed at you, there's not much you can do. You're not going to out-fork him, so you need to get around the side. And once he gets you pushed into a corner, he just... generally, he dominates the aggression and control categories.
You're gonna regret that.
And, well, I generally am not a robot that he can keep pinned, because I can throttle and dethrottle the weapon. It's not a great look because it makes me look very out of control.
Gyro flipper.
I really need a couple of good lucky hits on him, which opportunities for those are rare, whether it's Remy or Rachel driving it. Right there I was able to get that lucky hit, send him into the ceiling, and knocked off both wheels. And then, once again, in the finals here, against Mudskipper, right at the beginning I was able to put a couple hits on the pod, which is what I was always trying to do. Wasn't able to break them, and then it's all over but the screaming here. Pieces are flying, my battery falls out, and then he rips it right off.
You're dead. I'm safe. If you want to put it...
Game over. So that leaves it with Mudskipper winning, Nosferatu taking second, and Weird Flex taking third.